Yeah, Justin, thanks so much for having me. So my name's First Lieutenant Riley Compton. I'm an 0402 logistics officer, and I'm actually stationed right now here in Camp Pendleton. So how I got to be into the Marine Corps is always a fun question, and it's very different for me compared to a lot of people. So I didn't really have a big military presence in my family. Both of my grandfathers served, but very temporarily, and that was not ever something that was really talked about. So my dad was a professional baseball player, and my mom has been an amazing businesswoman and super successful that way. So I grew up in Indiana, and I always had a huge presence of patriotism in my family. We grew up in the Midwest. We loved America. Trucks, country music, America.
I'm from Indiana, so I know.
Yeah. So you get it. And I remember I always tell people when I was younger, I would sneak down when my dad was watching Navy SEALs, the Buds series, and I would be allowed to stay up late at night if I watched it with them, and we just wouldn't tell my mom. So that was my first big interaction with the military, was seeing this Navy SEAL Buds videos. And I remember watching it and just being so inspired, and the discipline and everything that it took. But as you know, all Navy SEALs are males. So I didn't really see any female presence in the military ever. And that's just not what I saw. So I was a college softball player. I accepted a scholarship to George Washington University in DC because I wanted to work for a 3-letter agency. So CIA, FBI, DOD, in some capacity, to work on the war of terrorism. I was always super passionate. I don't remember 9/11. I was only 4, but everything leading up to that and afterwards, I was really passionate about. So I wanted to help and support the military. I didn't really think being in the military was ever an option for me. And I met a recruiter, a Marine recruiter, who was a captain within my first couple weeks on campus. And he just started talking to me, and he did his job. I was like in awe of everything he had to say. And so back in 2016, I started my application process to go to officer candidate school.
How long is that process nowadays? So a lot of the officers I've had come on and talk, a lot of them are retired or they've been out for a few years and stuff like that. So what's the process now? Like, what do you think if I just walk up to the recruiter today, average length of time, do you think?
Yeah, so from an officer standpoint, it depends whether or not you finished college. So that's going to be kind of the main thing. So if you haven't finished college, you have that time to do it. So for me, I found them my freshman year. So I knew no matter what, I had to wait till I graduated. So 3 to 4 years until I could officially commission. But they have people that are juniors or have just graduated, and the process for that is a lot faster. Because essentially, once you get your college degree, if you haven't gone to officer candidate school yet, you'll go to 12 weeks. And if you catch them before you get your college degree, it'll be 10 or 12 weeks to go through officer candidate school before you go to the basic school. So it's not that long. It just kind of depends on where they can catch you.
So what year did you go to OCS?
So because I was so young, they made me do 2 6-week programs. So I split it in half.
Okay.
So yeah, it's called the platoon leadership course. And so I went in 2016 and 2018 because they don't want you to have too much time between the sessions before you graduate. So they still want the military knowledge and stuff to be fresh. So I did 2016 and 2018.
When you come back, are you with the same group of people? It's like the same platoon and all that stuff, or?
No, and that's what's so crazy is because I was so young, a lot of people went back to back. So I did 2016, 2017 because they were sophomores. But then that second round is when you have all your ROTC people. So that's always way bigger of a class because ROTC, the benefit is that they're saying, hey, you still have to go to 1 6-week course.
Yeah.
Where like for me, I didn't do ROTC, so I did the 2. So second time, it was all new people, all ROTC people from all over the country.
Yeah, good times, man. I bet having that split, there's a lot of people that are like, man, I'm not coming back. Like that was it for me. Like I got this break. They shouldn't have let me go because now I'm done. Does that happen? Yeah. Did you see that happen?
Oh, absolutely. And you don't sign a contract. Well, you do, but you don't sign a long-term contract. So you'll sign and you'll say, hey, like I have to show up and I have to be present for at least 3 weeks. And then you have your DOR drop on request. Like buds, like any other like big school, where people can refuse and leave. And I
Mm-hmm.
did see a couple people drop on requests. They're like, hey, people told me this is a resume booster. This is like a glorified summer camp. And we're like laughing at them like, who in the world told you
Yeah,
that?
for
This is
sure.
the Marine Corps. But
Yeah, definitely. Hey, real quick, can you turn your camera sideways? I just thought of this. I was just looking at it. I'll cut it and make it horizontal in the other version. My bad. I should have noticed. I didn't even notice until just now. Um, so college softball. How was getting into college sports? Is obviously an interesting thing. Moving from high school to college. Were you recruited, or is that something you tried out for? And my questions are going to lead to what are your thoughts on the now college athletes can get sponsorships and stuff like that?
yeah, so I was recruited. I accepted a verbal scholarship my sophomore year of high school. So you can't officially sign until your senior year. So I verbally committed and then I signed November of my senior season. So I knew I was going to George Washington for a really long time. They've tried to move away from that
Mm-hmm.
because when I was going through the process, there was eighth graders getting recruited and verbalizing to schools.
Yeah,
And especially in the softball community, especially with women, because unlike I'm thinking like males for football or basketball, they grow a little bit later. Softball or like women's sports, you can find that talent younger. And eighth graders, like before they had their license, like still have braces,
mm-hmm.
were verbalizing. And so the NCAA made a lot of reforms to change that. But I had just finished my freshman year of high school. I couldn't even drive yet.
That's
And I
crazy.
committed to play college sport. And it's so funny. I remember they're like, well, what do you want to do with your life? You know, what do you want to major in? Trying to like pitch their school about what good programs they have.
Mm-hmm.
And as a young woman, you're just like, I'm not sure. I like PE class. You know, I like gym. I like math.
Like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
still a little kid, man. Well, luckily, you said your
Yeah.
dad played pro ball, so that's cool. I mean,
Mhm.
that obviously helps out. He can help guide you a little bit on that stuff.
Yes, and he did. He was my coach for a majority of my life. I had other coaches, but he was always involved to some capacity because he was a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to the University of Arizona. So he went through that process. He had several schools that recruited him and everything. So he really was a voice of reasoning for me. But even he'll testify. He says it's way harder for you guys than it was for him because they try to go after you so young
Mm-hmm.
and get you to have that verbalization quick. And they'll give you a timeline. Like, hey, here's our offer. You have 4 weeks. And
That's
you're like,
crazy.
wow. Yeah.
That's crazy as a kid. You know, they're putting that pressure on a little kid. That's tough. You know, it's as long as the little kids had some say in this. You know, sometimes parents kind of overrule and like take control of that whole aspect of some kids' lives, but it is what it is. When you get to college and you're actually like an athlete in school, what were the rules prior to all these changes that have just been made? Like, what were the actual like, hey, you can't accept anything, like you can't have, you know, because I know it's pretty strict, right?
Oh, it was extremely strict. And people were under investigation at times all the time for getting free things or there was a bunch of, it was mostly seen in football. We would study about people that would take bribes or money or sponsorship or cars or those kinds of things. So at my school, George Washington, we would always have, it was our compliance officer had to come in and like explain everything to us. We had to sign it and we had to get that same talk every single year about what was allowed and what was not allowed. And at that time, there was no sponsorship other than the sponsorship the school had. So at the time for softball, we would have like an East End scholarship or for our softball equipment. So our bats and our gloves and stuff were like East End, or our shoes were Under Armour, for example. And we had to have those things and they were given to us, but we couldn't individually be sponsored by them or accept anything. And there's even rules on where athletes, if you worked a job and favoritism, that you couldn't be given something just because you were an athlete, or if you got free meals or all this kind of stuff. Like compliance was all over that. So it was super strict. And even talking to companies was never even a thought for myself or any of my teammates ever.
So that's got to put like high, you know, let's say like guys that may or may not get out and earn, you know, a really good living in whatever professional sport that they're planning on doing. Like, let's say you're on the edge. Like, I may get into professional sports. I may be good enough or I may not be. That kind of puts you in a tough spot because a lot of college kids are fully focused on their career and trying to get into these positions and do stuff. And, I mean, does that somewhat limit their opportunities to be able to go out and even pursue, like, a normal career at sometimes?
Absolutely. And I think why so many people would leave and get drafted early and not complete college is because they wanted to start earning revenue and money. And then you look back and those athletes never finished college and they never got their college degree. And the odds of them going back and getting at any point was so limited, which actually hurt athletes because you could be a sophomore or a junior, go wanting to become a professional to get paid and to get money because you weren't getting that in college. And then you get injured and you get hurt, you get kicked off the team and you have no college degree. And so now, because you are able to get sponsored, because you are able to get paid, I'm hoping it encourages people to stay in college athletics more and get their degree and get their education at that young age before moving on to the next phase of their life.
Because some people may only spend a handful of years. You know, so you have people like Tom Brady that has been doing it forever. And but that's not the norm. Most guys, like let's say football, only spend a couple years, or in baseball, depending on the position, you know, or how good you actually are, you may only be there for a few years. So you might have to fall back on that secondary education. Yeah, that's I don't know. It's an interesting thing. What do you see? Do you think there's any downfalls? Like, what are the downsides to allowing just athletes to get sponsored by whoever? I'm sure there's some rules, not whoever, you know, I'm sure.
Yeah, myself and my teammates are feeling that a lot, actually, because we're not college athletes anymore. We're amateur/professional athletes, and we're actually trying to pursue these sponsorships to continue our level of sport. So bobsled for Team USA is not government funded, and there's not a whole lot of funding in it. So we rely heavily on sponsors. Well, now, because every single college athlete is open, that kind of starts diluting the quality and like the product of what people are seeing, because these companies are saying, hey, the pond is now huge. It's a massive pond with a bunch of small fish, and we don't have to go after, you know, only the professional athletes after college. So the population is now bigger, and they're smart enough to know, hey, these college athletes just want money because normally they don't have another job, right? Yeah. So we can do this whole commission-based system, and we're not going to pay people because we'll just tell them that they'll get a percentage of whatever they make. So to be honest, it's actually made getting sponsorships like legitimately for athletes outside of college way more difficult. And that's something myself and my teammates are feeling right now, because these companies are like, hey, there's so many of you. We don't need to start doing this. We can get free advertising, or we can give you 10% off every sale. We're not going to actually give you revenue because I have all these people that are willing to jump on it, and they do. And so now it makes things really difficult, to be honest. So that's the effect that I don't think people realize. But once free advertising starts becoming a thing, we don't need to actually pay revenue, it's just commission based. It's like, is that a sponsorship or is that a sales job?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
you know, what's really crazy to me is that the government doesn't sponsor like USA Sports more than they do. You know, that it's not with the amount of things that we spend money on, like stupid things. And I mean, you could talk either stuff overseas, you could talk some of the dumb research grants that are out there, but the US government is really good at blowing money. You think they'd put a little bit into athletics. I mean, we still do really well, you know, in most competitions, world competitions and stuff like that. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I struggle with it in both ways. I can understand. There's always, anytime the government gets involved, people are always suspect, like no matter what, right? And so, like, I'm an employee of the government, being in the military, so I understand that there's a lot of red tape, and sometimes Congress can hold money and things can get out of hand. Government shutdowns, people don't get paid, etc. From what I see right now is we haven't given enough of a reason not to, because if you look at majority of Team USA sports, there is a lot of revenue. Team USA gymnastics, track and field, swimming, the big level sports are getting the money are getting the sponsorships and don't need the government. But then you look at Winter Olympic sports, especially, that not a lot of people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't only watch it every 4 years. Bobsled, skeleton, luge, different kinds of sports, curling, ice skating, even, that people can't relate to, that they watch every 4 years. Okay, that's awesome. An Olympic year, you'll see those sponsorships.
Yeah.
But then you won't any other time. And so it's very tricky because it's a dichotomy, right? Like, we want to be able to perform so well and get money and not have to be reliant on the government. But at the same time, it's like, we want to be professional athletes. And a lot of professional athletes, especially that are pursuing Olympic level sports, are below the poverty line, because how are you supposed to be the top level athlete and balance a job at the same time? And so I know my teammate Lolo Jones talks about that all the time. And in her book, she even wrote about that majority of professional athletes seeking Olympic level sports are below the poverty line. Now, I have to be careful, because when I say professional, like, my head would go to NBA, NFL, NHL. Those people, they're doing just fine. You know, those athletes, they are well taken care of. But again, it's more that Olympic level that you're not seeing every day. People aren't going in to buy tickets, stuff like that. So I don't know how I feel on this subject, because I feel like if one sport gets paid, then every sport would get paid. And would it even be enough? Would it be sustainable? Does that mean more taxes? So yeah, every decision that you make, it sounds good, but there's always repercussions.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why, like, I was asking, like, what do you think are the negatives about the sponsorships within college athletic sports? Because everybody thinks that athletes should get paid. They're like, hey man, you know, go out and do your thing. You draw a crowd or whatever, you get paid, or someone's using your likeness for, like the NCAA does, you know, they're using your likeness for video games and stuff like that. You should probably get a cut of that, you know? Yeah. In the Olympic world, I mean, to me, it's like, even if you don't give an athlete a salary, we don't even award athletes like any cash for, like, hey, you did great, man. Good job. You got gold medal at whatever. Here's a little bit of cash, where a lot of nations do that, don't they?
Yes. So I can't speak to all sports. I just know bobsled in the bobsled realm. But over in Europe, the bobsled athletes over there are on billboards. They get paid so much money. Granted, I always tell people they don't have NBA, football, you know, all that kind of stuff. So their best athletes will go to different sports, such as like sliding sports. But the athletes over there, like, that is their livelihood. Like, they'll stay in the sport just because they make so much money. And their sponsorships, to even have a sticker on their sled for a year, is $80,000.
Wow.
You know, those are the kinds of things that you start seeing. So over there, majority of the world has it figured out. I just think in such a niche sport such as bobsled, one, people don't know anything about it. Two, there's only 2 tracks in the whole United States. 3, we're not gathering a much of a crowd to be able to build revenue. So our only option is the Olympics. So it's not like the sport doesn't have money, because it does in other locations. It's just America.
Yeah.
And
it hasn't matured here yet.
Yeah, because we have so many athletes, we have so many sports, and it's almost expected. It's expected that we win. It's expected that we're the best. And people just assume that you get there without needing help to get to that place.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah, that's it is I'll be honest, I only really watch it during the Olympics. You know, it's like one of those things when it comes on. But when it comes on, I'm like, dude, let's watch this. This is sick, you know, because it's pretty exciting to watch, and I see why people love it. You're from Indiana. I tell people, I'm like, Indiana is cold enough to piss you off, and you get enough snow to be mad about it, but not enough to do any winter sports. You know, you might, if you get a snowmobile, you might bust it out like once or twice during the winter, like a handful of times. There's just not enough snow to do stuff like that. So how do you go from Indiana to something that, if you said you were from like upstate New York, you know, by Lake Placid or something like that, where this is known, I could understand it. But how do you get into this from, you know, being in Indiana?
As I said, I played softball in college. So softball was always my sport. So I played softball up until I was 22 years old. And I joined the military and went to officer candidate school, the basic school, logistics school, and hit the fleet. So once I was done playing college athletics, I realized that I didn't get what I wanted out of sport. I was really thankful for the 4 years, but I'm one of the most competitive people that most people meet. And I love to compete and I love to push myself and grind it out every day and see what I can, like what my capacity is, like what my limit is. And then I want to push it and I want to elevate it and maximize everything I can out of myself. And so my first step of doing that was getting to college athletics, Division I. My second goal of that was getting to be a Marine female officer. And then my third step was, okay, wait, what next? And I wanted to join and be a part of sport. So when I hit the fleet, I was looking for the Marine Corps softball team because you were able to travel. It was, I think it's like 4 or 3 weeks out of the year, but you're able to compete against the other services. And then they do a joint services and you compete sometimes against other countries. And I was like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. Well, there's a beautiful thing called COVID at that time in 2020 that shut that all down. And I remember finding out my husband was deploying. I was not going to be deploying for the 3 years that I was in this billet. And I just was telling myself, I'm like, this isn't it. Like, I need something else. Like, I haven't peaked athletically. I'm getting bigger, faster, and stronger. I'm getting more intellectual. Like, I'm starting to understand my body. Like, I need more. And I really felt like God just put it on my heart to pursue bobsled. So where this came into play was when I was at George Washington. There's a woman by the name of Alana Myers-Taylor, and she played softball at George Washington as well. And if that name sounds familiar to anyone listening, that's because she is the most decorated bobsledder in the world, and she just won 2 medals in this previous Olympics in February. So she, after the 2018 games, had come to George Washington and talked to my teammates and myself, and I was captain at the time. So I was allowed to present her the award. And I remember just listening to her and eating up everything she had to say. I bumped the teammate next to me and I was like, hey, in another life, I would be a bobsledder. Because at the time, I knew I was going to be a Marine officer. And that was what I had my sights set on. And I'm sitting in my office in 2020 after I just found out that they got rid of the softball team because of COVID. And I saw on her feed that bobsled was having an online combine. So it was online this year due to COVID. And I was like, that's it. I'm doing it. I picked up the phone. I called the development coach or like the recruiting coach. And I said, hey, I want to do this. Hey, this is me. I'm just letting you know, I'm going to submit a video and I'm a Marine. I don't know if it's even possible, but like, I'm going to do it. So like, Warno, I'm coming. And I called my husband, I called my parents, and everyone was like, what? Like, Riley, bobsled? Like, you just got to the Marine Corps. Like, can you just like focus up on what you need to do?
For sure.
And I ended up doing the online combine, scoring enough to get their attention, was invited to Park City, Utah, it's Park City and Lake Placid are the 2 tracks in the United States, and was able to perform. And they liked me, and I just kept coming back, and I started developing the skill and falling in love with the sport, and here we are.
When you say you developed a skill, what are the skills necessary to be a bobsledder?
So there's 2 positions for women in bobsled. There's the pilot position, and then there's a brakeman position, which is in the back. So I'm a pilot. So the skill is like literally navigating the sled and driving it down all the tracks. And it is a skill. Going 75 to 90 miles per hour down an ice track with different curves. No track looks the same, different ice conditions, and having to navigate and pull on different D-rings to rotate the front axle to get on and off of curves in a timely manner, to not hit walls and to not flip over, is 100% a skill that takes pilots up to 5 to 8 years to be an Olympic level quality pilot, like any other sport.
That's crazy. So what kind of like training are you doing to like up those skills? Because obviously you can't just go, hey, let's go get in the bobsled today. You're in California. So what do you do, in between?
So the season's split up into 2. So you have your winter season, you have your summer season. Mm-hmm. So between October to March, depending on when the weather gets bad, I am trying to take advantage of every single day I can to be on the ice. So in Lake Placid, New York, or in Park City, or in Canada or Europe or wherever there's competitions, I'm doing everything I can and fighting for ice time, because the only way to get good at it is doing it. And to do it, you have to be there on ice. but there is limitations, there's limiting factors. And so during the summer time, so March to September, all of us athletes, bobsled athletes, live across the United States. A lot actually live in California, and we're working on dry land training. So explosiveness, sprints, working on velocity, all this kind of stuff. So you're seeing like us pushing like the Prowler sleds and sprints and jumps and power cleans and any lift that you can really do to make sure you're powerful. So when you hit that 400-pound sled, that you can really push into it and dig and get that start.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what's the first time you step on the ice to go do that? What's going through your mind? You know, because is there like I don't know, do you just get in it and go? Like the very first time you're just like, here we go, man, we're going down the ice. Like, or is there any kind of like trainers that are like, you know, half speed, half length kind of, I don't know. Explain. I mean, it just seems crazy that you're just going to jump into one of those things and go for it, you know?
It is sink or swim. I will be completely honest with you. So I show up to Park City, and that's exactly my thought process. I look at the track, and I'm standing at the bottom of like the mountain, and I'm looking to the top, and I'm like, we start from up there, and I finish down here in less than a minute. And they're like, uh-huh. And I was like, okay. And we do what's called a track walk. We do this every day. So you're inside the track, you have these ice spike shoes on, and you're walking the track so you can visualize it and see it. And I'm walking, and you're staring at walls that are massively high. And then you see marks in the ice. And our coach is like, yep, you're going to be up there. So standing here, looking up and knowing that your sled is going to be parallel, you're just like, this is insane. What am I getting myself into? So it takes a very special kind of person to want to do this. There are so many people who have tried it and are like, this is terrifying. I never want to do this again. And we do not blame them. For me, I have a screw loose. I clearly decided to join the Marine Corps. Yeah. I have a big bug of like adrenaline junkie / like just like loving high risk situations. So for me, I'm like, full send. This is awesome. Let's do it. And on most tracks, they have kind of different starts. So there's a top where you start, but then there's a couple like kid starts, like working your way down. So we started halfway on the track. So we would go halfway, and they would just kind of release you halfway. So you can kind of like work your way into it. But at the same time, yeah, you get in and you're like, okay, sink or swim, go. And, you know, you're going down, and, you know, the wind's whipping, and I cannot describe it. The closest thing is like going down a roller coaster is really fast when you're on the down, but you have to control it, and you're moving from like side to side, or the same side multiple times. So it's exhilarating. It's insane. It's nothing like I've ever done before. There's people who do it and are like, yep, nope, not for me, never again. For me, I finished and I'm like woohooing. Like you can hear me, I'm like, woo, yeah, this is awesome. And so knowing that, I was like, yeah, this is a sport for me. But at the same time, don't let me trick you and think that it's been all perfect and rainbows and sunshine. I've flipped and I've crashed on my head, and you go down 80 miles per hour on your head, completely exposed to ice burn and concussions and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's scary. You have to take it very seriously, and be prepared for the worst. But also that's what makes the sport so fun, is that you have to be on it all the time. And it comes down to 100th of a second.
Yeah, for sure. That's like, you know, that's the, that like pushing the edge is like the Marine mindset, I think, sometimes. You know, like I want to go do super crazy for some people. Obviously, there's some people in the Marines that aren't like that at all. But for a lot of people in the military are like, hey, I want to like do cool stuff. It's dangerous, but that's cool. I've got all these safeties in play. If all those fail, something bad may happen, or it may not. But at least, you know, I'm having a good time, and I'm like pushing the limit on whatever it is I do. Would you agree with that statement?
Oh, 100%. People look at myself and other Marines funny when we say, yeah, we want to go to war. And it's kind of a dichotomy to that, right? Like, I don't want to go to war because I want my men and my Marines and my women to be safe and not in harm's way. But at the same time, that's what we train for. We spend our whole careers working and training to be ready for that call. So when we do get it, we're ready to go. We're ready to execute everything that we've been doing. So there's definitely that in the Marines. I think we all have something super special about us in the Marine Corps. I would say, I don't know if it would be called a screw loose, but there's definitely something in us that we've accepted high risk situations and we actually thrive in them. You know, when you feel that pressure and that nervousness and anxiety, that we're able to channel that in a positive way to bring out like bravery and courage and get after it and excel, where a lot of people, you know, the fight or flight might freeze up and not want to be a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. How has the military or the Marine Corps, I guess specifically, responded to you, you know, being involved with this? Like, how do you work that with your military career, you know?
Day by day. I've had so many people be like, how in the world do you do this? And I literally take it day by day, and it's not easy. And there's not a program in place for it. The Army and the Air Force have what's called the World Class Athlete Program, and your billet, your job is to be an athlete, and you're supported to the fullest in that. The Marine Corps and the Navy, we don't have that. And that makes life a lot more difficult. So you've heard of the Marine Corps wrestling team, you've heard of the Marine Corps boxing team and those kinds of stuff. Well, that's starting to get shut down. The Marine Corps wrestling team isn't a thing anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it makes things it makes things hard because we are a war fighter and I am a Marine first. However, I felt the Holy Spirit and the Lord like put this on my heart to join bobsled and to be in it. And my mission and my goal set is to pave a way for other people, for me to be the guinea pig, to make a way where there is no way right now, and have a way for athletes and Marines to excel and do both. Being a Marine first, and that's my priority, but I'm also able to balance this and be an athlete and excel and try to put the Marine Corps on a map in a positive light.
Yeah.
And so what that looks like is when I go and train, I'm on PTAD and I'm working just remotely. Even when I was in Europe, I would wake up at all hours and be working and be calling and stuff. And so because of COVID, that actually helped me. People were out of the office for 2 weeks and having to work remotely and all this stuff. So it actually was beautiful. There was a way kind of already implemented. So I was able to kind of just jump on board with that. But most importantly, it's due to my leadership. I came to my executive officer and my commanding officer, hey, sir, this is something I really want to do. Can I take leave to do it? And he said, absolutely. And when they invited me to come back and compete in my first international race, they looked through the orders. They saw that it was able to be eligible for PTAD, and they supported me and had my back the whole time. And the conditions that we had set for each other were, hey, Lieutenant Compton, you know, if your work decreases, we will reprimand you for that, and it will be noted on your fitness report. But if you're able to excel and balance this, you know, what an inspiration you can be for the other Marines. And that's been my goal, is not that every Marine has to be an athlete or pick a sport and want to go to the Olympics, but you can balance multiple things while being a Marine. And the message I try to get across to so many people is kind of like myself. Once I earned the Eagle Globe and Anchor, that was like a highlight in my life. But I had another goal immediately to fill that void. And people aren't setting those. And so whether or not that's going to college, whether or not that's working another job, whether or not that's pursuing athletics, I just want to encourage all Marines out there to be able to balance multiple things and not feel like they're stuck in one place and that they can't have other goals and aspirations like I do.
I feel like, you mentioned the Army, they have that, what is it called? World Athletes Program or something like that?
Yeah. WCAP.
Okay.
We like acronyms.
Yeah, obviously. I heard of that while I was in, and people talk about like, oh, you know, that guy's so good. Like, why aren't there? Well, we had conversations like, why aren't there more Marines doing some of these other things? You know, on these shooting teams and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And they were like, these guys in the other branches, they actually get orders to that, and that's all they do. Whereas like the Marines, like if you're doing a lot of these sports, that's an additional duty to it. You know, mm-hmm. and it makes it a lot more difficult. I don't necessarily understand why they would be against like someone excelling, especially at a world level, or attempting to get into that. Like if you have an actual, there's a difference between like, hey, I can actually do this, and someone that's aspiring, I guess. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just feel like if you're competing at a world level, how great would that be for the Marine Corps? Because every time you go out and you do something great, you're like, yeah, I'm in the Marines, and that's just there's this stigma that out there in the real world that all Marines do is go to combat and fight and like crazy stuff. And it's like, no, man, there's a lot of other stuff. Like not even the military is not, it's the majority of the military is not infantry or combat arms. It's a lot of other jobs and stuff that can lead you into other things. I don't know. I just feel like it'd be unwise of them to promote that. That's free promotions, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, don't you think that you're spreading, you and other military athletes that are excelling on the world stage are spreading the word that like, hey, we do other stuff other than just go deploy to combat zones?
Absolutely. And that's been my goal. And that's why I'm trying to get my story out to as many people as possible. And that's why it's a blessing to be on this podcast with you here and social media to push that envelope, to push that message out to others. Because when people start hearing about it, they're like, oh, why aren't we supporting them? We're spending all this money on billboards. We're a walking billboard. Mm-hmm. We constantly are promoting the Marine Corps. For me, I have zero intentions of getting out. I love the Marine Corps. I'm about to accept career designation here in a couple months and stay in. And I do that because I love it, but I want to achieve something here. And so I've had a lot of positive feedback from the Marine Corps. I won Camp Pendleton Athlete of the Year for females. I won Female Marine Athlete of the Year. So we are pushing that out. We are getting recognition. And that's my goal, is saying, hey, Marine Corps, I love the Marine Corps. I love what I do. I want to promote this in a positive light. Allow me to have other platforms so I can talk about you guys, so I can represent you guys. And I will still serve, give my time, and do everything I can. And that's the argument I'm trying to make to them of why they should continue to support me and allow me to do that. And unlike the World Class Athlete Program, I'm not asking to be only an athlete. I'm not asking that you fund every single trip or rental car that I need. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking that you just support me to where if I need to up and go and compete in Europe, that you'll be like, copy, Lieutenant, go ahead, go over there. You'll have a job when you get back. We expect you to do things, but we'll support you during that. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to work on. So I need to continuously remind the Marine Corps, tell other people what I'm doing, get higher officers on board to support me, because right now it's up to my local command. So I have a lieutenant colonel that's in charge of me. She's phenomenal and she supports me all the way. So anytime I want to do something, Lieutenant Colonel Young and my XO Major DePriest are so supportive. They're like, go ahead, Lieutenant Compton. We got your back. We'll support you. Here's what we still need from you. And I still work 5-6 hour days just remotely. And we have that good open communication. But if I had a new CO or XO come in, they could easily be like, nope, Devil Dog, you're a warfighter. Sorry. And it would all be stopped. And I couldn't go and I couldn't compete. And that's terrifying. It's scary to know that can change like that and people could prevent me from doing it. So I'm trying to promote the Marine Corps in a positive light right now by doing as much as I can and getting as many people to hear what I am doing. And it's a recruiting tool. I've had so 100%. Many people reach out to me on social media, and I love it, asking me questions about the Marine Corps, why I joined the Marine Corps. And ultimately, as Marine officers, only 5 to 8% of officers are female. And that's something I'm very passionate about because, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, I didn't really see females in the military. So me getting my face out there, telling people what I'm doing, I'm hoping is empowering and inspiring others to be like, wow, maybe this is something that I can do as well.
Yeah, it just seems like taking someone off the world stage of doing like any kind of sport is like a bad idea, And you saying you were the, Marine Corps Athlete of the Year and the Camp Pendleton Athlete of the Year, but who knows that outside of the people that read the MAR admin that hears about that? You know what I'm saying? Like, why isn't something like that getting promoted? Because that's a big deal, right? But we don't hear about that stuff out here. Now that I'm out here in the real world and I'm no longer in the military, we don't hear about stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's why I'm working. And it's hard because on top of everything I'm already doing, on top of being active duty, on top of being married, my husband is active duty, on top of training and eating right and resting and recovering, I'm also doing everything I can to push my story. So I was really blessed. My local ABC San Diego picked up the story because I'm local. Hey, Camp Pendleton Athlete of the Year, Marine, they gave me a 2-minute story. But I'm like, it is a lot on me to try to do to get it out there, to tell people. And it's exhausting, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet.
I was lucky the Marine Corps, when they, on their social media page, they normally do This Week in the Marine Corps. And myself and the staff sergeant who won the males, he was a wrestler at the Tokyo Games. We were both in that, but at the end of the video. So they're trying, I feel like they're trying to do a lot, but also at the same time, like, I understand the Marine Corps is a warfighting organization. We're trying to push our military objectives as we should be. But exactly, I have a story. I have something that I'm doing that I'm trying to inspire people, just as other Marine athletes are. And I have an audience that I feel like would be interested in knowing what's going on. But how do I bridge that gap? What are the resources I have?
Well, I think I think you're doing it on social media. That's where I came across your Instagram. I didn't even know, I'm here in San Diego. I didn't even know the local news did a story. I actually ran across your Instagram page. Is how I found that. And it's not necessarily an indictment, I guess, on the Marine Corps. I guess kind of, but it's an indictment on the media also, because they're not going to pick up the positive stories. You know what I'm saying? There's a huge, like, if I was a parent and not in the military and not involved with the military, the only stories you hear about female military members are negative ones. They're all bad. It's all, she got raped, this person was murdered, something happened, which is, don't get me wrong, all those stories need to be told. It's obviously horrific. And I think it's also showing people that the military is not a zero defect organization, and none are, but we never hear anything positive about like just anything that comes out of the military when you're out here in the real world. So what would you say to any like females out there that are thinking about wanting to join the military, or parents who may have a child that's, wanting to join or may have joined the military?
There's a lot I would say, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say this. All the concerns that I've heard that people had, I heard them all before I went into. I heard people tell me that I wouldn't be taken seriously because I was a female. I was told that it's not a place for females. It's a boys' club. I was told all about the sexual assault statistics and all that kind of stuff in the Marine Corps. And I feel like it was just a scare tactic, because here I am being 100% truthful and honest and saying it's been the most amazing experience I've ever had in my entire life. I feel like I have been supported. I feel like I have been uplifted. And I feel like I've made a difference in the lives of the men and women around me. And because I'm a female, that actually opened up so many more doors than I ever thought possible. So my advice to the women that are interested in joining the Marine Corps or interested in joining the military in general, don't let anyone tell you that you're not strong enough, that you don't have the leadership capabilities, that you won't be taken seriously, because that it could not be further from the truth. And to all the parents out there that may have a child that's interested in joining any of the services, don't discourage them. The Marine Corps has taught me so much about myself. I was already a college athlete. I was already feel like I was successful. I got a 3.7 GPA from one of the best universities in the world. And I thought that I had it. And the military had taught me more life lessons than anything I could have gotten out of that. They had taught me respect. They had taught me that it's not about me, it's about the people around me. They taught me what my purpose was in life, and how to inspire others, and how to make someone else's life better. We have people that join the Marine Corps that come from all different backgrounds and walks of life, that have suffered and trauma and are there because they had no other option. And you get to be an integral part of that person's life in teaching them stability, helping them get finances, helping them buy a house, helping them get a car, and helping them be successful and return back to society better than when they originally had come in. And I think the whole statistics of sexual assault and rapes and all this kind of stuff, it's there, but it's everywhere. Don't be fooled that that's only in the Marine Corps or it's only in the military. And what I did is I'm a sexual assault victims advocate. So I feel very passionate about that. So instead, I took the approach of, you know what, I want to be an advocate for individuals that do have this issue so I can start changing. And I'm going to get on the preventative measures. And as a sexual assault victims advocate, every single Marine every year is trained by me and my team about sexual assault. And how can we get on the preventative side of it? What are tools that we can teach people to look for things and warning signs so we're not reactive all the time? And I've seen a positive difference from that. So all that to say, I heard it all. There's probably nothing that people are saying now that I didn't hear.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, you are sometimes going to have some old folks that have been in the Marine Corps or the military for a while that don't like change and don't know how to adapt and work with females. But, you know, I'm here to say adapt and overcome is a motto that we have in the Marine Corps. And that's something that we all need to be able to work through.
That's interesting. I didn't know you were one of the sexual assault victim advocates.
Mm-hmm.
So you've seen all the statistics and you've seen everything about that. You know, I've heard some of them before, and I'm like, I just don't see it. You know, I spent 3 years as a mechanic, so I was with MLG at maintenance battalion, 2nd Maintenance Battalion, before I did my lat move and moved over to 10th Marines and Anglico and stuff from there. And I just never saw like some of it's just portrayed poorly, I think. You know, I think you probably can speak to this also. The same kind of, I guess, statistics or whatever get thrown out about colleges. You know, they say, oh, all these girls are getting raped in college, blah, blah, blah. How could you send your daughter to college? You know, stuff like that. And I lived next to Purdue University, and I never saw, you know, it just didn't seem like, I don't know, the reality is different, I think, than what's being painted in the media. What's your take on that?
Oh, 100% agree. And I think looking back, think about the Me Too movement and everything that started with that. Those were people that came out from all across the world that weren't always in the military, that weren't always in college, that weren't always in the workforce. These things happen. Crimes happen all the time. And I think the hard part that I struggle with when people throw out statistics is they say, oh, this many of sexual assaults were unreported. And I'm like, how do you know? Where did you get those numbers from? You didn't ask people whether or not that happened to them and they did or did not say something. Now, on another part of that, sexual assaults do happen. I know firsthand. I know plenty of people that have been traumatized and victimized by that. And what I would say to that is, in the military, we now do everything we can to support you. If you were sexually assaulted before you even got into the Marine Corps, in high school, or whenever, you can come to the Marine Corps and you still get all those services and support for the rest of your life. So we're not in the business. Yeah, we're not in the business now of trying to victimize people or kick them out of the Marine Corps. We're here to help people and like get through things that were tough and difficult for them. Mm-hmm. And again, make them better than when we found them, to make them integrate back in society once they're done with the services in a better place than they were, with better tools and ways to improve themselves and give them another purpose and identity. Yeah. And so I just see too many times it's just this negative and it's a scare tactic. And I don't buy it. I'm not someone that wants to live my life in fear. That's just never what I've been about. So tracking, I'm aware of it. Okay. I know that I'm at higher risk if I do this, this, and this. And I try to get on the preventative side. Let's talk about warning signs. Let's talk about what we can see if we start noticing different behavior. Who can we talk to? How do we step in? How can we make sure this doesn't happen? What really is pushing the envelope? What is consent? A lot of people don't get taught that. Mm-hmm. And if we focus on those things and we don't scare people, we give people tools and provide them resources, I think it's a different conversation that we have. And I think we would not be so fearful and living life in fear if we took that approach more.
I see it the same way I saw people talking about mental health in the military and people saying that there was a stigma and that you couldn't go to your commands and stuff like that. And I never saw that. Anytime I saw a guy that was having any kind of issues, it was an immediate like, hey man, you know, especially if you know this guy, like if you know this person is having issues, like they're not right. And you're like, I personally took a kid to the chaplain one time because he was telling me he couldn't sleep at night after one of our combat deployments. And I'm like, look, man, let's go talk to chaps. You know, that's part of the process, you know? And so it's hard for me to see when I know it happens. Obviously, it happens, but I wish people didn't think that that's the majority of cases or that's the norm. I think in most cases, most people will quickly be like, "Hey, let's get you some help, man," because nobody wants to have someone struggling, you know, within their section or within whatever. Like, you want to get somebody some help. Now, I will also say that there are people out there that use those services to get out of their own duties and stuff, which I've also seen people say. I very distinctly remember being in the field and a guy was just tired of training, was like, "I'm suicidal," and was like, "All right, and we're still going to give you the same courtesy." Took him to the hospital and everything like that. And he got taken off that deployment, and then within like a couple weeks, he's back on full duty and got promoted and stuff like that. You know, it's like, so there's like two sides to it. So I know, unfortunately, like I was saying before, it seems like the negative narrative is the only one that really gets out there. So I just wanted to touch on that for a minute. Do you think being in the military is making it harder to be a bobsledder?
I don't think so. I think, like anything, it presents a lot of challenges, right? And I'm going through them right now. I have a full work day, and unlike a lot of other people, and you know this, we work really early in the mornings, and sometimes we don't get out till after hours because we got to meet mission. And so this past week, I was at work until 2000. I didn't get my workout in. I didn't get to do the things that I wanted to do. You know, I suffered because of that, right? I didn't meet my goals of the day to get my training in and to get the proper adequate rest and recovery following that. But that was the mission that was in front of me, and I had to do whatever it took to accomplish that. And being an athlete and pursuing an Olympic level sport, it's almost impossible to do it without a job. Like we talked about before. If I wasn't in the Marine Corps and I was trying to pursue this, bobsled is one of the most expensive sports that I've ever been a part of, ever. Just a sled, is about $50,000. That's without the runners that can cost between $5,000 to $10,000. That's without the $250 shoes that we have to wear. That's without the $250 helmet that we have to wear. That's without traveling to Europe and to Asia and to Canada. And oh, by the way, transporting that 400-pound sled and all your equipment. So as you can imagine, it's very expensive. So if I didn't have a job, I could never support this. I could never afford it. But being in the military is not a regular job. It's unpredictable. No day looks the same. And I have a higher commitment. I have a commitment to my Marines, and they come first before me and before anything. And it does make it very challenging, and it's not easy. But to be honest, I wouldn't have any other way, because I pride myself on not taking the easy way out. I go after things that are hard, and I find no reason to give an excuse, because if I can do it, don't give me an excuse of why you can't do it. And that's what I'm trying to let people know.
So what are the next steps? Like, walk us through. The next Olympics are in 2026, correct?
Yes.
So what are the steps from now till then to get on the team to like represent your country at the Olympics, to be standing at the top of that mountain?
So right now I'm on Team USA development. So I've only been on the team for 2 years now competing, and I put myself in a pretty good spot. I've competed in Europe. I've competed across North America in races and competed against people who actually went to the Olympics. And that's been amazing. And my goal now is to, within the next 2 to 3 years, make the national team. The national team, as you can imagine, is the top level group in the United States. And they normally pick 2 to 3 pilots. So my goal is to be the top 2 or 3 pilots in the United States, to be competitive and to compete on the World Cup circuit. So I kind of have to explain this to people. I think of it like MLB. So you have Major League and then you have like AAA, right? That's essentially how bobsled's kind of breaking down. So MLB, like your major leagues, are your World Cup. And it's 8 races, sometimes on 8 tracks, sometimes you repeat tracks. And you go from race to race to race every week. So you'll show up, for instance, in Winterberg, Germany. You'll train for 3 days. You'll compete on Saturday. You'll compete on Sunday. Then you're going to travel to Switzerland.
Wow.
Rinse and repeat. And then you travel. It's like a tour. and you travel all throughout the world, including North America, Canada, Europe, Asia. So that's the top level that you want to get, World Cup. In every World Cup race, you get medals, and then there's an overall winner. So that's like our Olympics every year, including World Championship that people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a level, like a AAA level right beneath it. That's called, on one side, there's a North America's Cup, and on the other side, there's the Europa Cup. So I've competed in the North American Cup, which is the 3 North American tracks, Canada, Utah, New York. And it's the same thing besides 4. You do 8 total. So it's like 3, 2, 3 races back to back to back. So you go from Canada, you compete 3 races. You go to Utah, you compete in 2 races. You go to Lake Placid, you compete 3 races. And while this is going on, it's also a circuit in Europe of the same thing, but you stay within Europe. And all of these get you points based off of how you finish. So if you get first place, obviously you get the most points.
Mm-hmm.
And all these points gives you your overall world ranking. And based off of that, in an Olympic year, that's how you qualify for the Olympics, with how many country allocation spots are located to your nation. So my goal, so I competed on North American Cup. I've competed in some Europa Cup races. My goal is to get on national team so I can be funded and work on that World Cup stage and compete against the best constantly. In order to do that, I need to continuously have the flexibility in my job to do that. I need the finances to continually do that and to keep training and getting after it. And ultimately, the goal would be to be on World Cup team in 2026, to be competing, to get the points, and to get a qualifying spot for the Olympics. Now, the Olympics is a little bit trickier because they go off of the ranking, but you may have 4 pilots of the United States all ranked in the top 20, but you can only send 3. So only 2 countries, the top 2 countries based off of rank, can send 3 sleds. Then there's a certain amount that can only send 2 sleds, and there's small nations and people that only get 1 sled. So hypothetically, I could be ranked 12th in the world, but if I'm USA 4, I'm not going to the Olympics.
That's tough,
Yeah, but it's happened to so many of my teammates, and it's heartbreaking. They know that they're better than people that are there. They've beaten them consistently. They've worked super hard, and because the United States just has a high density of athletes, they get passed up on.
Yeah. It's it adds to, just like I've said on multiple podcasts, the U.S., we look at the U.S. compared to like Germany or Italy or whatever, but the U.S. is so massive. We're like all of Europe, and so we're getting, instead of having all those opportunities, like if you were really good in Germany, you'd have a really good opportunity to be on the team, whereas in the U.S. you're not, because there's just such, like you said, there's such a large pool of athletes here. Yeah, that's it's the name of the game, I guess, right?
Yeah, and there's part of it that's a blessing, because here I am saying, hey, if I'm going to be the best in the United States, that's an honor to be on Team USA.
For sure.
That means something, because look at all the people that we're pulling from, and what an honor it is to even just wear USA on my chest. But at the same time, yeah, you're like, dang, so if I was born in, fill in whatever country you want, you're like, man, I could be the skill set that I am right now and go to the Olympics there. And what I tell myself so I don't fall into that trap is I'm right where God placed me. I'm so proud to be an American. And if I never make the Olympics, then it doesn't mean that I failed at my job. It doesn't mean that I failed at my dreams and my goal. It means I'm competing against the best of the best. And to be honest, I want Team USA to be as strong as possible, because I want us to be like crushing every other country in the world. And if that means I'm a part of it, praise God. If that means that I'm not, okay, I'm going to be supporting all my teammates that got me there. And it's even cool. Like this year I was watching the Olympics and I was like, man, I've competed against her and her and her even this past season. And that's just a cool thing that I can live with.
Yeah, but also, for sure.
The Olympics, I think people glorify it into this great thing. And it is. It's a really awesome thing. But we see so many people struggle after the Olympics because you worked 4 years for all this hype for a competition that lasts 3 weeks and then it's over and that's it. So I also just want to remind people it's it's a goal. It's what I have, but I'm not going to make that who I am. And I'm not going to, that's not going to be my indicator of whether or not I failed or not.
That same kind of attitude is how a lot of us look at like guys that get out of the military. You know, when you hear about people that struggle after the military, it's because you're at this level, you're doing all these things every day, doing these like awesome jobs. You know, I was a JTAC, so I got to go out and do cool stuff. You know, I got to go to the field, I got to travel and do all this stuff. Everything was like really serious. You know, and there were situations that were like literally life and death. And it's like once you walk away from that, it's like everything else is like whatever. You know, it becomes like boring almost. But it also, some guys make it their entire identity. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like that is who I am. I was in the Marines, and I would probably say that these are probably the guys that I got out at 12 years. So it wasn't as bad for me, but you got guys that stay in for 20, 30 years. How can you not walk away from that and it be part of your identity? And I think you see those guys struggle because now it's like a piece of them's gone. And no one cares. You know what I'm saying? No one in the military cares that you're gone. Like the Marine Corps is a machine. The machine is going to carry on even after you're gone. Like everybody's going to say goodbye at your going away party, and then it's over, and you're out, and then now you have to deal with the real world. You know, like everyday life in the real world, and you know you'll see that eventually at some time when you get out. And I'm not surprised by that statement because you're pushing yourself and trying hard, and you feel like you're doing something important, and you're working with people that want to be there and that are at the best. You know, they're at the highest levels. And it's just different when you get out. So I'm not surprised by that at all. It's funny. I was telling my neighbor the other day, cause I don't run. I'm not a runner anymore since I got out of the military, but I was like, dude, I was a slow runner, man. I was in the Marine Corps. I ran 3 miles. My best time was in the 23-minute time range. I was like, in the Marine Corps, that's like, oh, nice job, man. You could probably do better. You know, in the real world, people are like, shit, dude, you ran 3 miles in 23 minutes. And it's just like it's just a different mentality and a different group of people. So like I said, I can completely understand that kind of struggle after it's over.
Yeah. And what I say to that, to so many people, is what is your true motivation behind what you do? And any Marines I talk to getting out, or some of my teammates, I'm like, why did you do this? What was your purpose? And I think that's what's tainted and that's what's off, right? If I just joined bobsled, I'm like, oh, I'm only here to join the Olympics. Well, if I don't make that, that means I failed at life, right? I'm going to take it that seriously. Or same with the military. Like, I'm here because I'm a Marine and I'm a war fighter, and I'm going to go to war and I'm going to do all this stuff, and I'm going to be remembered by everybody and all these outward things. Well, that's going to fail you. People are going to fail you. The world's going to fail you. And at some point, your body's going to fail you. And no, you can't go anymore. And so the thought process that I take with the military, and especially with athletes, is it's like, not what I can get out, like not what I can do, but what I can get out of it, and the growing as a person, and the experiences and the relationships and things I would never be able to do. That's what I want to remember. That's what I want to take out on. That's how I want to grow. And then I could walk away and be like, wow, you know, that wasn't the path that I initially thought, because it never is. But wow, look what I got out of it. And I think that is how people will be able to be more successful, not making it your whole life, not making it your whole identity, to have something else, but also understand that there's growth that happens within you. And at some point it's going to end. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, for sure. It's just another chapter. You know, you're just turning the page, and what's next. And I tell guys, you know, I've said it, and a lot of guys do. It's like, oh, I'll never be that cool, or oh, this is back when I was cool. You know, when you're talking about being in the military, and it's like, dude, there's still plenty of cool shit I've never done. You know, there's so much stuff out there. Like, there's no reason to like sit on the couch and dwell about past cool times. Why not go out and I think that's who you see on social media. You have a lot of like military influencers and stuff on there that are like doing that. You know, they got out of the military and now they run like gun ranges, or they're like parachutists. You know, they're out there jumping out of planes, or they're just they're doing stuff that's still like high adrenaline, but they're just active. You know, they're out there doing something instead of like just sitting back and thinking about the good times and bad times, you know, of being of the military life. So yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. You got a few years till you have to worry about that, so no biggie there. What's been the hardest track for you so far?
Lake Placid.
Yeah.
Down. It's one of the hardest tracks in the world. If you watch or you search Lake Placid bobsled, majority of the videos that will probably come up are crash videos of people. That's comprised of 20 curves, and you can literally crash in every single one of them. And not every track in the world is like that. It's our home track, but it was created to be one of the toughest and one of the most extreme, and it has that reputation. It's intimidating, but it's also exhilarating. And once you get it, it's super rewarding. But at any time, the best in the world can crash. And like I said, you have to be so locked in and focused, and the smallest mistake can just flip you or cost you seconds. Mm-hmm. And Lake Placid is one of those. It's longer than majority because it has 20 curves. So there's so much ice time that things can go wrong. But at the same time, it's world renowned. It's the home of, I believe it's USA's home track. I mean, we have Park City, but Lake Placid has all of the history behind it, and that's where our Olympic Training Center is.
Yeah. What's the vibe in the local community? It has to be like, since that's where the track is, that has to be like people actually follow the sport and get into it there, right?
Yes. You see that way more than Park City. People in Lake Placid, it's a smaller community. People know winter sports there. Mm-hmm. There's the ski jump there. There's the bobsled skeleton. There's cross country skiing. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And majority of the population is super involved. It's not a huge town. You know, they have that one strip of downtown for the most part. And you have, you know, a bar with a bobsled out front of it called Zigzags, because they redid the track, but the track Zigzag used to be a famous corner there. And when you come there, you know, you also know Miracle, and that's what people think of is like the ice hockey and Miracle, and that stadium is still there, and it hosts all these hockey tournaments, and you see all these young kids playing, and that's super awesome. And speed skating, they just held the world. Oh, it's called FISU. I forget what it stands for, but they hosted the World College Championships or whatever of all the world. So you had people from Japan and the Netherlands like staying at the Olympic Training Center with us, competing speed skating. Lake Placid is just known to host athletes and winter sports from across the world. Now, if I would never go there if it wasn't for bobsled. It is super hard to get to. It is super small. It is winter lasts forever. I think they just got like 12 inches of snow like 2 weeks ago. It's kind of gloomy and snowy and cold all the time, but you know, it has a special place in the sports community.
That's cool. That's cool that they embrace like the history of it and stuff too. You know, it's like you could probably like feel the Olympic spirit, I guess, while you're there. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So, I mean, who? Okay, here's a question: if you're there and you crash on the track, what do they do with your bobsled? Do you just flip it back over and you finish going down, or it's like, all right, hop off, we're gonna pull a track? I mean, how does that whole thing work?
So, I tell people, I hope not a lot of people can answer this, but if you've ever been in a car accident and your car's rolled over, you kind of keep rolling until you stop, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the difference is in a bobsled, you're going downhill.
Yeah.
So you go all the way down. If you crash at curve 2, you're still crossing that finish line, but on your head.
Oh, really?
Time. Oh, yeah. Because the momentum, you're going downward. It's like if you would drop like a marble, if you drop anything, it's going to go all the way down.
Wow, I thought the friction of it being flipped over would stop it from being able to travel the rest of the way. That's crazy.
No. And you still are humming. You're still going 50, 60 miles per hour. Your body's taking all the friction. You're getting ice burn. You're pinned. Yeah, you don't stop. You go the whole way down. So what happens is every point of the track towards the end, it's called low point. At some point, you're going to start going back uphill because you're getting ready to brake for the braking stretch because you have to stop. An object in motion will stay in motion, right? So there's a low point generally. So if you crash, you go down the whole track. Sometimes you cross the finish line. And then because you started going uphill, you're going to go downhill and you go back hill and you're finally going to stop at that low point, you like, the medical team comes, you get out of the sled, they flip it over, you have to put it on the scabbards, which like are just like protecting the runners. You pick it up, and you get offloaded with the medical team and have to get checked, and you most likely, depending on the crash, aren't going to be going again, but sometimes it depends.
That's crazy. I thought there was like, I don't know, I just thought I didn't think you'd ride the whole way on your head like that. You know, that's damn. How many times have you crashed?
Quite a few. Quite a few. When you're learning how to do it, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know. And that's why I say a lot of times too, people are like, this is not for me. Everything's great when it's going fine. The speed,
for sure.
is fun. But when you're pinned inside and you can't get out, it's terrifying. I mean, I've heard people scream and freak out, and you're stuck. Like, you can't, there's nothing you can do. I don't recommend it. I don't like watching them, but after this, maybe Google bobsled crash videos, and you'll be able to see it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine. Did you, after your first crash, were you like, man, maybe, did you reconsider what you were doing at all? Were you like, maybe this isn't for me? Or how bad, was it bad enough to even, consider something like that?
I think when you're in it and you're going down, I would be lying if I said I didn't get scared. It's uncomfortable. It sounds just like, and you're just like scraping on the ice, and your head's getting thrown, and you're scared. It's one of those things where it probably is only 30 seconds and it feels like an hour. You really need to stop and slow down. So when it initially happens, like, I kind of get that like scary moment for like 2 seconds, maybe. I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, okay, breathe. I pray. I'm like, okay, it's going to end. Stay calm, stay focused, rely on your training. It's going to end. All pain is temporary. And afterwards, I'm so pissed off that I want to go right back again, that I made a mistake. So for me, it's that competitive, like, darn it. Like, I know better than that.
Yeah.
Like, Riley, that was a stupid mistake. You're better than that. Freaking go back up and fix it. And so for me, it's like, it's not about how hard you fall. It's about how you get back up. And the way my brain works. And there's times though when I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, I banged my head pretty hard. Like, it's not a good call for me to go again. But generally, I'm so ticked off and competitive that I'm like, no, I refuse to get beaten. I refuse to be mentally weak. I refuse to let this take hold of me and let this fear sink in. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to fix my problem, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to be better because of it. Is generally my thought process afterwards. But again, depending on the crash, there's been a crash where afterwards, me and my teammate were like, we hit our heads so hard. We're like, yeah, we're going to call it. We're going to rest. We're going to regroup, and we're going to refocus, because going back up, nothing good's going to come out of that. And like I told you, you have to be so mentally locked in, that if you're not fully there, you're just going to crash again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's got to be very lasered focused, for something like that. Man, that'd be so scary. I'd be afraid of like snapping my neck or something. You're talking about flipping over on the top, or is there like room to, do you like tuck in a little bit? I mean, I don't know. That just seems wild.
The pilot can tuck in more, but the brakeman's completely exposed.
Yeah.
And to put this in perspective, my dad, he's 49. He's turning 50 this year. 2 years ago, I asked him to be my brakeman. Like I said in the beginning, my dad's like my best friend, and he's trained with me my whole life. He was so amped up of going to Park City with me. He would send videos. He took all the stuff to my family beforehand. Like, he's just a firecracker. Like, I love my dad. And he went in, and he was like, that was the scariest thing I've ever done. I refuse to do it ever again.
Oh, wow.
Even
really?
him.
Yeah. It's like the wildest roller coaster ride ever.
The G forces, you get up to 4 Gs, which is equivalent to a fighter pilot. In the back, your head's down and you're rattling and you have no idea what's going on and you're not in control. And so there's a lot of like fear. And yeah, even again, like my dad, someone I look up to more than anything, professional athlete, had been so mentally strong, been through everything. He was like, dude, I can't, I'm sorry. I love you. I don't want to let you down, but I can't get back in there. And again, it happens. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you can't handle it. it's just not for everybody. And
For
it's
sure.
similar to the military. People all the time, thank you for your service. I don't think I could do it. And then it's the same thing. I'm like, that's okay. You weren't meant to do it. I couldn't be a doctor. I couldn't be a brain surgeon. Like, that's not for me. So I
Hmm.
think the people that can do it, or I can't cook to save my life. I make rice and chicken and that's about it. So all the people that are professional cooks, I'm like, wow, how do you do it? Like, that's such a skill. It's the same thing. We just all have certain things that we're good at and like qualities and places where we can excel. And sometimes we have places where we shouldn't ever be ever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it takes all kinds. Are there any are there any big like social media bobsled people that put out like really cool content, like GoPro videos of, not just crashes, but like, actual cool videos?
Yes. So I have a couple on mine. I actually have one I just did recently of end of the season,
Okay.
and it goes through a bunch of clips. It's like a minute long reel. I'll definitely make sure I send that your way so you can see it. But yeah, there's POV. So if you type in like Lake Placid POV, it's not the same because you can't really hear the sound or like how crazy it is, but you can at least see it a little bit. And on YouTube, they're all over there. Myself and some of my other teammates will sometimes wear a GoPro and post that so people can see it. The hard part is the GoPro, because of all the pressure and the G's, will fly off your helmet.
Hmm.
So like,
Can you mount it to the sled?
you can, but it flies off of that too.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane. But 100% YouTube, you can go on my page, you can go on some of my teammates' pages, and you'll be able to find videos of what it looks like. And that's also when people are like, yeah, no, like you blink and you just went through 3 curves. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's intense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, what an interesting and like wild sport. You'd think that there would be a ton of like really cool content out there, That's the part, so that's the part you guys have to embrace on your side, is putting an effort into making that really cool content. That's what brings in, hopefully, more advertisers and stuff or sponsors for you guys to keep the sport going.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I will say it's a little bit harder to get cool stuff because, like anything, you go by so fast
Hmm.
that if you're standing in one spot, you will get a 2-second video. And it's almost impossible to get like the full
Yeah.
track. But I will say, like, we are getting better. Social media is putting stuff out there, but it's also, believe it or not, a lot of people don't like for me, my audience, and I post a bunch of reels, my bobsled stuff never does as well as like my military stuff, for
Mm.
example, which I would have thought, I'm like, yeah, I think I would want to see bobsled stuff. It's so much cooler, but literally it's cooler. But sometimes sometimes, because people don't know what it is, or it's not interesting to them. Or I don't even know the algorithm. I'm not even going to get involved in it because I don't understand it, but doesn't pick up that stuff.
Mm.
So yeah, there are some really cool things without giving too much away. You will most likely be seeing something on TV really soon. Could be a couple months, could be a year. I'm not exactly sure. I've been
Cool.
talking to some people of some cool things that are going to come out on streaming services and stuff like that. So keep your definitely eyes out for that. But yeah, we're doing everything we can because, exactly like you said, the more we get this out, the more people can feel a connection, the more revenue, the more we can support our athletes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up then, and you can go ahead and pass along your social media handles. I'll put it all on the screen for those that are watching on YouTube and stuff. But for the people listening, what's your Instagram handle or your different social media handles? Do you have a website or anything, or any businesses you want to promote?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. That's really the only social media platform. I try to keep it just in one place. So my name's Riley Compton. Rye is what everyone close calls me. So it's rye.compton, like the city. You should be able to find it. It's a picture of me. I only have one account. So if any of those crazy accounts follow you with like 3 followers, it's not me. And I just want to give just a special shout out. I have it on, but Jocko's company, Jocko Fuel, has been supporting me. I'm sure a bunch of people listening here have heard of Jocko. If you are interested in any of his products ever, he's a sponsor of mine, super supportive, love his brand. I've been using his milk and all that kind of stuff forever. You can go on to Jocko Fuel and use Compton 10 for 10% off, and I get those that money to help support me and carry on bobsled. So I just want to give a shout out to them and just say thank you so much for everyone here listening. Being able to share my story with all of you guys is such a blessing and an honor. And I'm so excited to hopefully bring positive light on the Marine Corps and give you guys something to be excited about.
For sure. I mean, how can people hate on it? I think it's really awesome stuff. Again, like I talked about in the beginning, everybody has a different path in the military, and two people can join the same job and have completely different careers at, in different ways. So I really appreciate you coming on and giving us your inside information on bobsledding and college sports and everything else. And everybody check out my website, jkramergraphics.com. My Instagram is @formeractionguys and @formeractionnews. And that's it.